Testing one, two. Testing one, two. So, hi guys, Donnie Rouse here, and I am back. This one is, I wanted to share. It was inspired by a podcast I had listened to, and also was had to deal with some stuff that I'm going through in my own life. And how I'm dealing with it, I wanted to share with you, just because I know that it is very, very beneficial advice, and if you follow it, it'll bring you peace. So, without further ado, hi guys, my name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life, Never Lost. Do you ever feel like you're don't know which step to take next? Like there's all these decisions, or maybe something literally took the carpet from under your feet, and now all of a sudden you feel a little bit anxious, and you're like, well, what do I do? Where do I go? Like, why did this happen to me? And you're shaking your fist at the sky. Excuse me. And you're shaking your fist at the sky. That is when you need to have faith. It's so easy to want to have a plan for everything, right? To have your life fit in this little box and say, okay, well, all right, I know everything that's going to happen and it's going to go this way. And you could try planning all you want. I think there's a quote that says, when you plan, God laughs, meaning there's always it's never linear. It's never this straight line to your destination. And sometimes the destination you have in mind is not where you were destined to go. Maybe there is something even greater for you. But it takes for you to let go of whatever it is you're holding on to before you can see what that greater vision is. In my business, the space I'm using to brew my coffee is actually getting sold. So this past week, I was just had this influx of feelings like, what the hell am I doing? It just caused me to question everything. Like I was, all right, well, where do I want to live? Where do I want to move? What do I do with this business? It was just all these decisions. And it literally, I felt like all I wanted to do, I felt like I wanted to fold up. I feel like I just wanted to run away from everything. And then I was listening to Trent Shelton speak. And he had mentioned something about your perception, right? The way you perceive things that are going on in your life. Like, it's impossible for us to perceive whether or not something is good or bad, right? Because everything that is happening to you, you're perceiving from past experiences. And I'll give you an example. With this kitchen being sold, this space I was renting, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm thinking about, I got to go find a new place. And I was thinking about all the troubles and the hassle that it was going to take. But then I remembered something that he said, and it was very, very amazing, because I'll share it here. He goes, what will this mean for your life? See, whenever we apply meaning to an area or a part of our life, what we're doing is we're filtering that through past experiences. And as a result, you're thinking about all the reasons why it didn't work or why it's going to go wrong. But when you look at something from how it will, like what the meaning will be, now all of a sudden you're looking to the future. You're asking that future part of you, well, what will this mean for your life? When I thought about my company and my business, I'm like, well, it means that this is the time for me to step up and grow the business and step out in a bigger way. And I was like, oh, interesting, right? It felt very differently. And as much as I wanted to run away from it, right? Because I'll tell you, I was talking with another entrepreneur friend of mine. He was like, man, I love having my own business because it gives you freedom. He's like, but man, he's like, when you work a lot, when you start your own business, you have this fairy tale images of like having just like this abundance of money come in, freedom, and doing all this stuff. While it's not all possible, it's not the reality, especially in the building phase of it. So there are many times where I literally wanted to run away from my business, where I felt alone, like I couldn't relate to anyone because no one knows what it feels like. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that same feeling. But for just as for every hardship, every like negative feeling or something that happens, I mean, there's the positive too, right? It has this balance. I mean, it forces you to grow in ways that you could never imagine, never imagine. So when I heard that, what will this mean for my life? It just made me think differently about everything. Like, well, all right, well, what will this mean? Like, well, how do I want to step out going forward with this? And as a result of that, it gave me a new perception of the future, something new to work towards. See, it's very easy to fall in the trap, and Trent would talk about like having a vision board, right? You have this vision board, and you're saying like, oh well, like I want I want to go here, I want to have this much money, I want to live here, and you have all these things, but that might not be what you were destined for. So Trent was an NFL athlete until he got injured and couldn't play anymore. Now all of a sudden, he inspires people through his podcast and through public speaking and other things. And in hindsight, he could have said, "All right, well, this was my vision, right? I want to be a star NFL player, right? That could have been his vision, and he could have felt sorry for himself because things didn't go his way. He got injured, and I'm sure there was a lot of like, the podcast didn't get into all the emotional, the intense emotional things that happened, right? Because he's just saying, well, then he figured out, he saw that how he was affecting people now. Like now he's living his purpose. Now he's doing something that fulfills him inside. But if he was just grasping onto that vision of playing NFL, he might not have had that. Excuse me, my throat has been. I woke up a little hoarse, but I still wanted to come on here, regardless of the fact that I have a little bit of cough. So the fact that he couldn't see what was that laid ahead for him. But it's so true of life, right? What you want to grasp onto things, you want to hold on to things, but perhaps there's a better plan. So that was one of the biggest lessons that I have been dealing with, I guess, in learning to incorporate more trust in my life. And it's not easy to always do that, right? Because you want to control, you want to know with certainty where you're going, what's going to happen. But if you remember anything about the excitement and the positive emotions in life, right? It all comes from the stuff that you don't have planned. I was in Italy this past, just came back. I was in a long trip in Italy for 5 weeks, traveling around, getting ideas for coffee beverages. In the beginning, it wasn't that easy. Like in the beginning, I was going through a lot of comparison. I was, looking, I travel like this is the jacket. If you're watching this live, this is the jacket I would usually wear. I travel like a backpacker because I am a backpacker. I backpack. And walking around Rome, I just felt so underdressed. I felt, like, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like a bum. Literally, that was the word that was going through my mind, and I'm like, I'm almost embarrassed to even say it here on camera, on the microphone. But that was how I felt. Like I've gotten teased about how I dress from like my siblings growing up, so it was like this trauma that I would always compare myself to people walking around, even people who were they could be dressed in sweatpants, I could be nicer, I could be dressed better, but I'm still comparing myself. So I'm walking around Rome, and for the first while of that trip, like the first few destinations, that's the comparison was literally cycling through my mind, and it wasn't putting me in a good state. Like I wasn't enjoying my time there because I was just stuck in my head. And the other thing was that I was alone too. And I remember, though, that, whenever you're in that place of winter, spring is always around the corner. As hard as it feels, know that something better is right around the corner. You just have to wait for it and have faith that it's going to come. When I was traveling and I felt lonely, it's not the first time that I've ever felt lonely in one of my trips. I've felt lonely a million times and million trips. But one of the things I always remember that is like, no matter how much I felt, that feeling would arise, I always met somebody, right? I'd always meet somebody, and all of a sudden I would have a friendship that would far outweigh any feeling of loneliness, right? I could have gone away for the entire month, spent 4 weeks, 4 weeks in 6 days feeling lonely. But then if I meet that one good friend that I'll have for the rest of my life, that to me is the icing on the cake. I'm totally fine with that. And then so remembering this lesson, how it just kind of always comes into play when I'm traveling. I'm like, you know what? I always meet. It's always like this. Every time I travel, and when I'm traveling alone, right? Yeah, it gets lonely. You're traveling alone. You don't know anybody. I always meet people, and I always make a very good friend. So as I remembered this, all of a sudden now it gave me just a release. I was able to relax, and I was having faith now. I was like, I know it's going to get better. It always gets better. And then all of a sudden that was planted in my head, right? Whenever something would happen, I would always say, things always turn out for me. That was like the phrase I kept saying in my head. There was a time where I was going to a train. So this is the same trip, right? I'm giving you kind of a time lapse of where I was in my mindset and then where I finished up in my mindset. So as I realized, things always get better. I always make a friend, and it's always worth it, right? I wouldn't trade like that exchange of like feeling lonely for the friendship. I wouldn't change that for anything. And then when I was going to a train one day, and like I can't remember, I was late, running a little bit late, and so I was, let me just get the ticket, and I wasn't gonna like start darting towards the train, so I just walked over the train. And something happened. The doors closed, and all of a sudden they opened again. And I get on the train. I'm like, huh. The lady's like, you are lucky to have gotten on the train. I was like, it doesn't matter. It's like, if I got onto this one, I got on the next one. Things always have a way of working out for me. And she's like, oh, really? So I got down there. I sat on the train. On that train, I saw that there was, it was a train. There was like a bunch of towns that that it would go through in order to get to that stop. I was going to Riccione. And one of them, I saw a place that I want to go to, like this place called Fano. I was like, oh shit, it's only like 2 stops left. 2 stops later, let me do that on this trip. So I did that, and I go back. And then the following day, I'm going to, I don't know if I was going to Padua or Ferrara. I think it was Padua. And I accidentally didn't, I missed my stop. I think I fell asleep. And so as a result, I ended up going all the way to Milan, which was a good chunk of time out of my way. And then the mindset was, well, everything always, life's always happening for me. Everything always works out. And with that mindset, I started, I went out of the station. I grabbed like a coffee. I went to a coffee place that I normally like to try a new roaster that I did. And I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I met someone there too. I don't exactly remember the experience, although I have probably literally 1,000 photos of that trip, maybe even more. But I just remembered everything always working out. Everything always works out. Fast forward again, like to present day. Like I'm going through this stuff with my business right now. Like it's throwing some of the balls up in the air. And I'm also in the process of doing other things like showing up here more frequently for you and figuring out how to provide more value and really speak my purpose, my mission for being here. And like, it just, I mean, and like my sole purpose, which is for you to go enjoy and live the life you're meant to live, follow your heart. And in doing that, the same resistance I always came with. I was like, oh, well, what course should I make first? Should I train people in espresso? Should I, do my One Life course to give people clarity and guidance and inspiration on their life? Which one should I do? And as I'm listening to this workshop and going through this coursework, I'm like going back and forth, and it was causing me stress. And then I relinquished control. I said, okay. I was like, God, Jesus, I give you permission to intercede and guide me. Like, I trust that whatever I need to focus on is going to make itself apparent by the end of this seminar. And all of a sudden, as I do that, all of a sudden, like the weight is let go, right? You drop the weight. You're like, oh, all right, this is great. Yeah, I could just see what inspires me. And all of a sudden, like, ideas start coming down. I'm writing down like page after page of notes, and the inspirations there. So where are you holding on in your life? Like, where are you grasping so hard to the result that you want to get that you're not allowing any other possibility, perhaps something even better, to show up in your life? Next, what if something, let's just plant, imagine something better showed up than you could have ever imagined. How would you feel? Right? Like, what if something you'd be ecstatic? And then secondly, how would it feel if you just let it go? Right? And you just trusted and had faith. And I feel like it could be kind of vague to, like, just me saying that could be like, all right, well, yeah, sure, it's easier said than done, but it is and it isn't. You realize that very little is actually in your control, right? You could control the way you act or respond, the actions you do, but outside of that, you really don't have control. So if you can just accept that, you could start to unpack and let go of these layers, this weight that's been holding you back, and just feel lighter about going your day and how you interact with people. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is a reason, right? There's a purpose. Everything is guiding you in the direction that you are supposed to be. You might not know what that is right now, but you are being guided. The key is seeing and looking for the higher meaning, perceiving it with a new set of eyes, not from the eyes of your past experiences, which are limited because your interpretations of those past experiences are faulty. See what's going on with the eyes of God, or with the eyes of someone you admire. All of a sudden now, setbacks, what may appear to be setbacks, are just something that are pushing you further along your way, or exposing you to something completely new. I hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. If you did, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. That is how I get subscribers, to more people to listen to this and follow their hearts to live their true one life. And if you have any kind of questions, comments, would like to subscribe, or share your story, I would love to hear it. You can send them to me via my website at www.donnierouse.com, www.donnierouse.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, you only get one life. Live it. God bless, and I will see you again soon.